think about when you buy a medication from a pharmacy and you're just given the medication as if you were any other patient,
Yeah.
you don't not know whether that medication has been prepared for you. But in the compounding pharmacy, it is personalized for you. Men's health, women's health, hormone replacement therapies, derma as a section. All of these things to me are the areas where patients are needing help rather than just talking about GLP-1, because GLP-1 by itself could be a weight loss drug, but weight loss, if supplemented by, let's say, NAD levels, testosterone, by the right fitness levels and so on, can have a much more positive impact on your life and lifestyle going forward and so on.
If you talk about GLP-1, when I was reading through it and even when I heard it before, I was not very confident. That I was like, how people can take this?
Once you start taking it, then is there confidence enough to be able to sustain that? Can you adhere to that, have second dose, third dose, and so on? And that's where I personally see a lot of patients falling off because the confidence is not there. But bigger piece there is that there's no community for me to provide me that confidence or be there as my sounding board or be there to support me through my journey. I think we need to start changing our communication from just specific compounds that we probably have been focusing a lot more.
My guest today has led some of the largest customer organizations in global technology and now brings that same operational discipline into one of the most regulated industries. So Jaspreet, I am super excited to dive into this with you. Welcome to TeqTalk. So Jaspreet, your move from Microsoft and Autodesk into pharmacy has happened in a very, very interesting time. I would say that where healthcare is influenced by tech grade expectations, right? Patients, providers, whoever you ask in this ecosystem, they are now expecting proactive communication, real-time visibility, and kind of digital self-service, right? And as per the report, it also says that 60% of the digital experience directly impact your trust and loyalty.
Absolutely.
And in pharmacy, if there is a delay in fill or miscommunication, it's not just a bad sprint, it's like broken therapy journey altogether, right? So success is now redefined completely, and I think it is the customer success has to be built with more care, I would say. So I'm curious, when you made that shift, what actually carried over from the big tech, and what do you think has worked really well, and few things which you think are not going to work really well in this healthcare?
Absolutely. No, I think that's actually a great question, Jas. And you're right. I mean, having lived in the software IT industry for 3 decades now, our definition of success from an IT or an OEM organization standpoint was very different. We used to worry about a lot of our customers who will buy your software. And once they have their software, all that we care about is how they will use our software, right? Not the real impact and so on. And I think what this move to the pharmacy business does actually is, and I'm personally very, very pumped about it because I think it's really the deep care that you just talked about is so critical. And I've been very passionate about medical field in general, having grown up with pharmacy businesses and so on. I think what it does to you as a chief customer officer is not to really worry about your business matrix, but to your point, worry about the real customer, and that's the patient waiting for the care at the end of the whole thing. And I think that to me actually was also an exciting bit. When I heard about this company, I did not know about this before, but when I heard about this company, when I started speaking to Sean, who is, by the way, our founder and CEO, I was blown away by the mission and the purpose that this company has. And that's all about quality access to medication to everybody in the US, right? Now, we want to take it to the global world, but as we know, the medical system in the US needs a lot of help from people like ourselves. So I think for me, that was the exciting bit on how I can transition from a software company, bring all the goodness that I've learned from the technology space, all the stuff that I have done, and bring that goodness over to the pharmacy world. And to your point, now I don't look at my success as average handle time or how many cases you solved and so on, but I really care about how many patients got the care when they deserved it, right? Because it is a patient waiting at the end of that medication. When we ship the order, is that reaching on time? Because the access delayed is access denied. People talk about law, but to me, access is pretty much the same. If you don't get the medication on time, it could be life-threatening. So that's the stuff that I'm bringing in from the software side on technology, infrastructure, tools that we know which can make the systems work, but the system has to work for the end customer in this
Mhm.
case compared to what we were doing in Microsoft. So I think that's a huge focus shift that I'm bringing in. So the customer first approach still applies, but I
Yeah.
think because the customer impact is very different than a software customer impact where it's very indirect, here is the direct impact. And that's what I'm trying to inspire my organization from the CEO all the way to manufacturing, to IT, to talent acquisition, to make sure that everything that we do is in service to that patient. So I think that to me is a huge change.
Great, great, and absolutely valid feedback. And you were mentioning about Sean, right? The level he started from, he was, I think, electrical or mechanical engineer. I was watching one of his
Yes.
podcasts, and then how he entered in pharmacy and the scale he has built into is incredible. The whole journey, and
Yeah.
absolutely great viewpoint on how you're making the change, because this industry is so personal that care out of other things are equally important. And if you compare, if you see small pharmacies, personalization seems to be real kind of thing where human and relationship driven is more, but as you scale it doesn't, create
Work
that,
the same way.
the focus changes a bit.
And I think to
Yeah.
your point, as you said, yes, compounding can be as personalized as somebody in the garage doing compounding the medication and giving
Yes.
it to Jaspreet, right? But when you do compounding at the scale we do, we are the biggest compounding pharmacy in the world.
Yeah.
So once you have thousands and thousands of customers, to your point, the personalization becomes very, very tough. But it's
Yes.
required because the expectation from a patient standpoint is I don't really care about whether your operation is 1% pharmacy or 1,000% pharmacy. I still deserve the same personal attention and so on. So I think that's what we are trying to bring into this, pharmacy operations by actually having the chief customer officer role is
Hmm.
back to the point, how we can think of every customer as individual customer and personalize the journey for that one. And I think for me, that has become critical because now I don't only think about Jaspreet or Sean as one patient. Now I think about those 20,000 providers, prescribers, pharmacies, and patients as all customers, but I can't treat them all as one, right? So we are starting to think very differently about the whole customer journey by persona, right? We have done those things in the technology industry, but now we are thinking about, as I said, pharmacy, providers, prescribers, and
Mm.
patients as to how do they deal with you as a pharmacy and how we can personalize. And I think as just as you were saying, the expectations are now different, and hence we have to think of solutions who still can make those personalizations possible at scale, right? I
Mhm.
mean, think about when you buy a medication from a pharmacy and you're just given the medication as if you were any other patient.
Yeah.
You don't not know whether that patient that medication has been prepared for you. But in a compounding pharmacy, it is personalized for you, right? The salts have been mixed, the APIs have been mixed to the needs that you have. So we have to make sure that we can tell and talk about this medication to you now, what this means for you, not
Mhm.
generally like this antibiotic will for you, but how this specific medication is going to treat men's health, women's health, the derma that we are behind, and so on. So I think
Yeah.
that's where we are focusing a lot more about the customer journey and the personas of every patient, and then trying to think of on how do we personalize at every single phase. Journey has become a lot more important, and I'll talk about more that as we progress.
Absolutely. And Empower Pharmacy is operating at a massive, massive scale, right? And one of the most trusted pharmacies, I would say that. And it is known for maintaining high touch experience, right?
Yes.
So, where do you think the automation is genuinely helping within the systems? And do you think there are places where, you still want to keep things manual, which will not hurt the system overall?
Yeah. So I think there are two ways to think about it, right? One is that there are things that you can optimize which patient doesn't necessarily care whether they come from a digital
Yeah.
form or whether they come from a person himself or herself, right? Now, just to give you an example, if I have first placed an order with Empower Pharmacy and I want to know about that order right now that information doesn't need to be given by just calling the customer and letting them know where the order is.
Yeah.
That's okay to be done digitally because actually that's the format that patient also prefers. I'm on the move myself. As long as you can text me, let me know where my medication is, I'm fine. But when it comes to the care, it's a lot more personal. So if I
Yeah.
want to speak to a pharmacist, that
Hmm.
what are the implications of this medicines? What are the symptoms that I need to watch for? What are some of the watch outs? What is my refrigeration policy? In that particular case, I do not want to trust the digital interaction that I have. In that particular case, I
Absolutely.
want to speak to a pharmacist. So we are being very mindful, going back to the whole journey, right? in my case, I'm responsible for all of the post sales experiences, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when the customers come on board, the very first experience that they have is on how do we onboard them as patients. Now,
Yeah.
this could be for a clinic, or this could be for a provider, like a doctor
Mm-hmm.
writing those prescriptions,
Yeah.
or this could be for a patient himself or herself. Like for a doctor, it's critical that we are able to integrate their systems along with us so that the prescription can come from the EMR right from their
Mm-hmm.
system to our system. Right? In
Mm-hmm.
this particular case, they don't necessarily bother about whether it's a human talking to them because it's technology talking to technology. But when things go wrong, then they want to speak to somebody, and that's why we want to make sure we have those customer service people available to be able to talk to them and pacify that things will happen quite fast and so on. So yes, I think going back to my whole journey approach, we are now looking at from onboarding to enablement to
Mm-hmm.
usage of those products to adherence of those products and all the way up to retention of those customers on how do we think about that journey and which are the areas where personalization is absolutely required and where automation can come in. And I never ever believe that it is one versus the other. I think it's
Hmm.
one and the other, right? So to me, it's the power of the and, not the tyranny of the or.
Absolutely. I really loved it. It's not versus, it's together. So
It's and.
wherever you think human interruption or human emotion is needed, you're putting it there, people. And then wherever you think that it is kind of monotonous task and you're not facing the providers, patients, or people, just automate it. So very
Yes.
clear, crisp, clear. Thank you for that, Jaspreet. And let's talk a little bit about trust, regulations, and what's happening in reality, right? So in pharmacy, it feels like credibility isn't just being about compliant, it's also about confidence, right? Especially when
Absolutely.
the environment is so much under scrutiny. So we saw clearly during GLP-1 shortages, so compounding pharmacies stepped in, and I think Empower was one of the most trusted ones. And it filled the gap basically when there was a shortage. And then the shortages started, you know, easing up for
Yeah.
GLP-1 in 2025, I believe. And
That's correct.
compound
Towards the
therapies.
tag end of 2025.
Yeah.
July.
So the compound therapies started winding down and enforcement expected, the expectations started shifting it again. So in the moments like this, when trust doesn't hold on its own, it's all about, it's about holding together the communication, transparency, and how clearly expectations are set, right? So that's where customer success moves from basically background to the front line. So I would like to
Absolutely.
understand from you that how do you keep provider, patients, and everyone in confidence steady when the rules and are changing and therapies have to evolve in such rapid space?
Yeah. No, I think that's actually an amazing question because, as you said, healthcare pharmacy is one of those businesses which probably has the highest regulatory requirements, compliance
Yeah.
requirements, and so on. And I think, but from our standpoint, we think of it again in two ways. One is that, first of all, you make your systems, processes, structures, all the way from
Mhm.
manufacturing to customer service, so much more dependable that you can be guaranteed that everything that happens in the system is happening with quality. So, right? So quality
Mhm.
is at the forefront of everything that we do. And hence, even if you go back to our mission statement, it actually talks about quality, service, and access, right? It's not just
Mhm.
access or through innovation, obviously, but we want to make sure that quality
Yeah.
remains an utmost focus. So I think because of that, and Sean talks about that a lot, including the pictures from our facilities and the checks and balances that we have in our system to make sure that all the way from manufacturing to supply chain to customer service, we do those things with quality. But that's not enough, right? Because I think the facet that you're touching is that even though if you can do those things with quality, but when things change in the market, then what do you do about that? Right? So to me, the first step is that yes, you keep maintaining that quality standards that you have in everything that you do. The second piece is when you actually start working with your providers and patients, but also at the same time with the regulatory bodies and the compliance bodies in the country. Because it is
Mhm.
not hard. If I was in their space, I would absolutely be curious to know what thing is right versus what is not right. Because it's not about the
Mhm.
business. And as I said, it's all about the patient. So I think all the regulations and the laws are trying to protect our patients and providers and pharmacies and so on. But we, as a provider of that service, have to make sure that we are able to go back and enlighten them with what is possible and what is not possible. Back to the
Mhm.
GLP-1 conversation, right? Yes, when
Yeah.
GLP-1 shortages were there, we came in, filled the space. But now
Yeah.
certain states are moving away from some of those and saying, hey, that thing is not possible. But ultimately, we need to understand if the formulation is safe, if the formulation
Mhm.
is shown to show the benefit, then is regulation more important or is the access more important? And if the access concern is quality, then how can we be guaranteeing that quality can be given at every single step of our process in the same way as any big pharma does and so on? So I think
Mhm.
that's our focus on how do we work with those regulatory bodies and make sure that we are doing the right thing in the right space. So we are absolutely working with FDA, other compliance agencies, and making sure that we have open access to them to come over. We call a lot of governors and legislators into our facility to talk about not just the pharmacy business, but also broadly about the healthcare challenges, what access is required. So to me, I think it's a balance. It's a balance
Mhm.
between how much you want to create the regulation and compliance versus how much you want to give the access. And I think those struggles are not just a healthcare struggle. That could be talked about in the security space,
Mhm.
in the other spaces, and so on. So I think we want to play a responsible party here, the role of a responsible party, because we can represent our patients and providers, and we can
Mhm.
also represent our government. And I think the conduit that we are, the hook that we can be to really instill that trust and faith that we just talked about by
Mhm.
doing things right and by showcasing that we are able to show the benefit. I personally believe we need to do a much better job of showcasing the successes. We haven't
Yeah.
done enough of showing the successes, because once you start looking at the men's health, the women's
Mhm.
health, and all the stuff that is happening in that industry, and how our patients and providers are much more happier using those therapies and so on, like hormone replacement therapy. I have seen patients who have seen life changing experiences, right? So we
Mhm.
need to bring that at the forefront and show to those governing bodies that this is what is possible. So I think once you're able to balance that concern with the proof, then you can make those steps forward. And I think that's exactly what I'm trying to do. Not just in making sure that we deliver with trust, but also take back that trust message to those bodies and instill more confidence.
Absolutely. A very, very valid point, and a lot of points are coming in my mind. So, one by one, I'll go ahead. So, why do you think the other pharmacies are not able to, move in the line which you are thinking? This is a space which is dealing with people directly, right? They are in touch with people. It's like life and death. You just cannot provide any medicine randomly, which will not work out. So, why? What do you think things are going wrong with other pharmacies?
Actually, I will probably flip the question in a different way, because I think the intent of every single pharmacy or every single business actually is to do what probably I'm talking about. I think in certain cases, what happens is that you're probably not in a place and position to be able to do that influence and so on. So we want to make sure that we respect the. I mean, I don't know if I want to call ourselves Big Brother position, but I think just the sheer fact that we are a large compounding pharmacy, we want to represent our fraternity in a much more responsible and much more cohesive fashion. So I personally believe that every pharmacy probably tries to play their part, but
Mm-hmm.
having critical mass, having the scale, having enough data points, and having done those things with the confidence and the trust that I just talked about from a quality standpoint, I think we probably just have more ammunition to fire compared to probably some other pharmacies. But from an intent standpoint, I think every single pharmacy wants to do that.
We know that 40-50% of the patients on chronic therapies, they discontinue within couple of years, and it's
That's right.
not because of the therapy fail. It's because of the experience, right? Sometimes there are missed refills, sometimes there is no follow up, sometimes there's confusion. That's the whole reason. So what are you doing differently in your organization which will make sure that the patients being stable, they are still continuing in the therapy?
Yeah. No, I think you are actually hitting the nail on the head, because that is one of the biggest challenges that this industry has. And as I said, honestly speaking, Jazz, if we were having this conversation even 5 years ago, no one would think that men's health, women's health, especially in the age where at least I have reached, is a concern, right? And nobody paid attention. Nobody was even willing to talk about men's health, women's health, hormone replacement therapies, testosterone, and so on and so forth. So I'm actually personally very happy that we're in a time where people are talking about it and taking steps about it to be able to take care of themselves, from obesity to derma to everything around that, because I think these are critical life threatening diseases, and if taken care of, one can actually have a very, very healthy and positive life post those. And
Mhm.
I know of so many experiences and so on. But I think you bring up a very good point, and I think the reason for that is one, it requires personal conviction and strength to be able to go and start doing this process. But more importantly, you also need an ecosystem to be supportive. But the
Yeah,
problem is,
exactly.
you at least took the strength to be able to take that route, but somebody else is still not comfortable doing that because it's still a taboo, or it's still not very guaranteed, because we still do not have enough data points on the after effects or the reactions or what could be repercussions of using some of those therapies and so on and so forth. Or at the same time, forget the negatives, think about the positives, right? As I said, if people do not know that thousands of people have made their lives much better by using some of those, the thousand others will never come into this picture, right? So I think we have to do a much better job of highlighting the success, because success begets more success. So I think one of the biggest reasons in my own mind is that people are not aware on how successful these things are. If somebody talked to you or me personally in a friend circle about Ozempic or GLP-1 or whatever, it is actually looked upon as a negative thing. People don't even want to talk about that. But the reality is, it is changing patients' lives. And I've spoken to patients who tell me that they are much more healthy, they're eating much better, they're much more fit, they're much more active. So I think we need to bring that story rather than somebody using GLP-1 as a treatment, right? It's okay to do that as long as their life becomes better. So I think it's
Yeah,
my job as a chief customer officer to be able to highlight a lot of those things so that many more patients, many more providers actually are encouraged to do a lot more of these compared to not doing enough. But I
yeah,
think then what you talked about is very important. Once you start taking it, then is there confidence enough to be able to sustain that? Can you
yeah,
adhere to that, have second dose, third dose, and so on? And that's where I personally see a lot of patients falling off because the confidence is not there. But
mm,
bigger piece there is that there's no community for me to provide me that confidence or be there as my sounding board or be there to support me through my journey. I have to be there as a pharmacy in that patient's journey. But I believe if I can bring 50 more patients in that journey along with that patient, then you have a cohort of patients together who can talk through it, who can talk about the positives, who can talk about the
yeah,
challenges, who can overcome those challenges and so on. So so again, I'm thinking of this as more from the adherence part of the customer journey that I was talking about on how we can ensure that we are able to enable and let our customers know with a lot more knowledge, a lot more material. Because the
yeah,
research and material is not enough. So if you are taking some medication, you may not be confident enough after taking first dose and you haven't seen the impact and you're already worried about the negative repercussions, you're going to drop off. And actually, we see a lot of patients fall off, actually as high as 50% plus patients fall off after the second dose and so on. So I believe that one, they need a lot more enablement, information, and coaching around how to use those medications right. The second bit that they need is they need a community along with them, right? So
mhm,
I'm using my team to be able to make sure that when patients and providers come on board, how we can support them in their whole journey, not just from getting the medication, but also in sustaining and adhering to that medication. The second thing that we haven't started yet, it's been only 8 weeks that I've been here, but second thing I want to bring in is that digital side of the house where we want to
mhm.
bring communities where people can come and talk about these things and we can support those communities with enough information. And that's my
Absolutely.
last point. We need to
Yeah.
do a lot more communication. It's not
Mm.
marketing, it's communication and sharing of knowledge, both about the benefits and the success stories and so on. So I think those are my three-pronged approach on how I want to handle that going forward.
Yeah, I completely agree to all of the points you have mentioned because if you talk about GLP-1, when I was reading through it and even when I heard it before, I was not very confident. I was like, how people can take this? And that kind of community is still lacking where people go and talk
True.
about the positives. So I think the drop-offs are happening because people are not getting confidence. They are not sure
Yes.
that if it is really going to work after one dose, second dose. But then when I hear from certain people, those who have taken in my group circle itself, it's like great, working like a charm for them.
No, I think you bring up a good point again because I think initially when we started and even as recently as last few years, we've been focused a lot about which medication, which combinations we can bring in, which are going to be
Yeah.
important for the market. But as you grew more and more, you start realizing that these are actually solutions or areas of treatments that we actually need to start focusing on. And I think that's how now we are starting, or we are going to start talking more about men's health, women's
Mm.
health, hormone replacement therapies, Dharma as a section. All of these things to me are the areas where patients are needing help rather than just talking about GLP-1 because GLP-1 by
Mm.
itself could be a weight loss drug, but
Yeah.
weight loss, if supplemented by let's say NAD levels, testosterone, by the right fitness levels, and so on, can have a much more positive impact on your life and lifestyle going forward, and so on. So I think we need to start changing our communication from just specific compounds that we probably have been focusing a lot more on. Because even if you
Mm.
think about it today, whether it's Novo Nordisk or Hims and Hers talking about, hey, this pill is here, I think to me that actually becomes a more of a marketing blitz than
Mhm.
really customer focused, patient focused communication. And what we want to talk about is those are the areas of solutions that we want to take forward, because those areas in my mind are important. As I said, when women reach an age where menopause, premenopause, post, I think those stages are very critical and they need
Yeah.
support. The problem is nobody has talked about that. So if I just come with one medication, then you may think, oh, that's one medication, but that's one benefit. But I talk
Hmm.
about the whole stage of a woman being in that stage and what
The
all do
whole
you
life
need.
cycle,
That to
basically.
me is a lot more
Mm-hmm.
patient conversation than a medicine conversation. And as we kind of talk in the technology industries, always focus on the problem, then go for the solution. I think we probably lead with our products, but we want to lead with the problems, more so going forward. So I think in my mind, that's going to become more important. We're going to pick up the problem areas, we're going to pick up the treatment areas, which are going to be critical, and then make sure we have the right lineup of medications in every single field of that. Because that I think will also help with the larger adoption. Because nobody wants to
Exactly.
talk about GLP-1, but if you talk
Hmm.
about men's health, every man is interested. If you want to talk about women's health, every woman is interested. And I was actually having a conversation with, just like you said, I was talking to somebody who lost more than 100 pounds of weight using some of the medication that they took from us. But it was not just medication, it was the right lifestyle, it was physical activity, it was right habits. So I think it required a lot broader solution than just medication. So we
The
want to
whole
come with
support model, basically, right?
absolutely the whole support model. So I think if you talk about the problem areas, then we can talk about solution areas, and medications become just one part of it. Right. So I think that's how I think about that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's a great model. I would say that because if you're supporting patient even after the therapy for a certain number of years or so, they are more
Yes.
happy, they feel connected, and then they get confidence, and that's how the community is built. It's a slow process, but a growing and a very trustworthy process.
Yeah,
So
I think it builds loyalty. I mean, even though I know
yeah.
people, when you talk to leaders like myself, we'll talk a lot about loyalty because I think it's become a buzzword from an industry standpoint, and I absolutely care about loyalty. But to
Mm,
me, loyalty is not forced. Loyalty is earned, and
mm,
loyalty is earned by the trust, the credibility, and so on and so forth. So I think that exactly whatever you said actually is loyalty, right? So I'm not here to drive loyalty, but I'm here to make sure that we are credible partners for patients and providers in their journey, because loyalty will just come along. And once loyalty comes along, then they will be here with us years over years and bringing a lot more customers and so on. And that goes
absolutely.
with the yes. So I don't
Mm,
go behind the matrices. I think I focus on doing the right things to deliver the right outcomes.
yeah, absolutely. When you think about the predictive customer success, right? What are the early signals you trust the most?
Now that's actually very, very, a big space. And I think I always think about this because it can change by industry and so on. But in my mind, I always think about it from a philosophy standpoint of breaking it
Mm-hmm.
down. What are your lagging indicators and what are your leading indicators, right? So I will not probably name one or two facets here and there, but I will just say that I always start thinking, first and foremost, I say to Sean all the time that I'm your first customer advocate in this company, right? So anything that happens to the customer, anything that can mar the customer experience to me is the leading indicator.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, yes, the customer satisfaction, the customer effort score, which we all in the industry have become so comfortable, monitoring and measuring, in my mind, are lagging indicators, right? We
Mm,
worry about those indicators after the fact that they have happened. But to me, just the patient not receiving the medication on time or just the quality of medication not having the right impact are the leading indicators whether they like you or not. So I think I tend to divide my own scorecard into lagging and leading indicators. Rest, I'm not preaching any customer success leaders on this, listening to this podcast saying that lagging indicators are not important, because they are, because they help us in taking broad actions for
yeah.
our organizations more broadly. But I think leading indicators need to be controlled right at the onset, because that's what matters the more from a customer standpoint. And as I said, because our customers are direct customers, we can't wait for that feedback to come from our customers who are going to deploy my software. In this
Mm,
case, those customers are having our medication and so on. So I think to us, the signals are very clear. I mean, to your point, churn rate, I mean, I know company sweats about it from a revenue standpoint, but I
yeah.
sweat about it more because one patient lost is one opportunity lost. It's, I
Yeah.
mean, absolutely revenue. So I worry about that. But I think to me, I start focusing on my customer matrices from a leading indicator standpoint. And if you've been watching me through my journey, I always have believed that you can't make your patients or customers happy if your own people are not happy, right? So I always say
Mm,
happy employees equals happy customers. So I also look at the leading matrices from my own team. right? What my teams are telling me in terms of their own satisfaction. Are they having the least effort? Are they spending less effort on the work they're doing or not? Because if not, then they're not going to make my customers happy. So I think I apply a lot of technology fields principle, but then I start worrying about my customers and their leading matrices.
Very well said that in SaaS, any missed engagement can lead to churn. But in
Absolutely.
pharmacy, missed engagement can really impact the health and the life of the person. So that
Yes.
raises a bar of accountability, empathy, and proactive design, which you are building. So tell me, for our viewers and listeners, what customer success practices they can borrow from you to adopt more towards outcome driven model instead of the static model.
Well, I mean, that's an area where I think we all probably need to learn from each other. But I think I'm a strong believer in mapping the whole customer journey. I mean, healthcare industry just happens to be one where I can see the customer journey so distinctly and so clearly. It's not always possible for all of my peers and my other leaders who face this challenge. But I always believe that you have to make sure that you're able to look at the whole complete customer journey from a customer standpoint. One of the
Mm,
biggest challenges that I noticed from a customer standpoint or from a company standpoint is a lot of the companies are defining those journeys from their standpoint. Like, how does my sales work? How does my marketing
yeah.
work? How does my customer success work? And once you start
Mm,
plotting that journey, you're thinking of forcing your solutions onto the customer. My ask will be to reverse that and start thinking about how the customer starts dealing with you. How they are discovering you, how they are interacting with you, pre-sale, post-sale, how you're onboarding them, how they're using them. Try to understand the moments that matter in every part of the journey. And once you know the moments that matter, those are your biggest opportunity areas. And I think that's what exactly I'm trying to do. I'm not saying I have built a wonderful customer journey myself. I'm a journey, myself to build that. But I think for me, we have to focus on those critical moments in every single phase. So if you are a CMO, you need to figure out on when customers are searching for you, when they're considering you,
mm,
when they are even discovering you, how can you figure out on how can you catch their attention and so on. And for customer success leaders myself who probably are listening, I think then it is all about post the sale, what is the interaction that they have from their standpoint, what is the outcome that they are expecting, because that should define your process. And I usually see leaders imposing their practices to the customers and saying, okay, how do you come around? And I can name many software companies, even though I won't want to name, where they will come, oh, I have this ERP system. You can just deploy
mm,
that. I have this, bots that you can come and apply. I get multiple mails every single day. Just because we have a
mm.
best bot solution, go and apply. And I'm like, if that doesn't solve my customer's problem, I'm not even interested. So talk to me about my customer's persona, my customer's problem, the moments that matter to my customer. And if that's the solution that you got, then I'm interested. So I think I'll just reverse the frame that we all use as leaders and put customer first. We all have heard the story, like in Amazon, how leaders would keep a chair in their conference rooms as, hey, that's a customer chair, and so on. But I think those stories are generally told very well and they sound very good. But how many of us actually are applying that story all the time? And I can tell you in my own C staff meetings, I play the customer advocate myself. I will challenge Sean. I will challenge my HR. I will challenge my manufacturing, saying that what impact it has on the customers. And believe me or not, but every time they are probably not always thinking from a customer standpoint, because the focus is, for a seller, how do I sell? For a marketeer, how do I market? Right? And as I said to you, for me, yes, loyalty is one of my biggest thing that I want to care about, but I want to create loyalty by things that matter to the customer. And if I do that, then I don't even have to think about loyalty. So we just have
Mm.
to detach from some of the lagging, outcomes that we think we are trying to create by the work that we're doing, over to, putting the customer first, making sure that we figure out the moments that matter, and then start operationalizing on how your solutions, how your products can actually have an impact on those moments that really matter for the customer, because that will bring
Yeah.
loyalty to those customers.
Very true. I mean, you're trying to make customer centric ecosystem where you're going to give priority to the customer and understand, know your customer, and then, build solutions, provide input, feedback, solutions to them. And I think that goes to all the industry, not only for the healthcare
Absolutely.
being personal to everyone requires more attention. But in fact, I think this is a great advice for all of the leaders, that look at your customers, know what they want, and then provide solutions. Do not just pitch on any random solution, which is not going to work. So,
Yeah.
very well said. So, just tell me what exciting is going to happen in 2026. What top three items you are looking to launch, or you want to make empower pharmacy to another next level?
Yeah, and I think again that question can be skinned in many ways. And I think from a company standpoint, one thing is true that we are a high growth company, so we absolutely have to make sure on how we can sustain that. But more importantly, I think it goes back to the mission, the purpose that Sean carries on how do we keep expanding the quality access to our patients as we go forward. In the process, we absolutely will grow. So I think to make that happen, we are very, very focused. And I think that's where you will notice that we've been very, very focused on bringing in leaders who will do the right thing. We are very focused on making sure that we are able to, first of all, bring the solution areas that our patients have been asking for. So you will see a lot more innovation coming in every single space, where we'll probably come up with a lot more solutions in every single of those areas, where we can expand that access, expand that innovation to be able to manage those problem areas that our customers are facing. Second thing, which is probably more personal to me, is about on how do we make it so personal that we can be a customer first company, not just from a boardroom poster
Mhm.
standpoint, but more when customers actually can reciprocate that and can actually stamp that and say that. So you will see a lot more focus on our customers. We are trying to put those journeys together. I intend to meet a lot of customers during this year and involve them in building a lot of our processes so that it's not just that they are the problem. In my mind, they are part of the solution, right? And I always say that how can you be a part of the solution? So I want to bring in a lot of customers voice, not just from a feedback standpoint, but also from a solution standpoint. So we will be using a lot more technology. I mean, if you spoke to any leader today and that leader did not mention AI in the podcast or video, it will be probably incomplete. And I absolutely am very, very focused on using AI, but I want to make sure that AI serves the purpose of automation, digitization,
True.
in conjunction with the customer journeys, in conjunction with the human capital that we want to deploy. Because I think my strong belief is that it's going to be the human judgment, the human work that we can do using all the insights that probably are coming through. So a lot of the non-value add work probably could be done by the AI, but a lot of the value add work I think we can do along with the AI and so on. So we're going to get focused a lot more on being customer first in the industry. So that will bring a lot of digitization, automation, and so on. And I think finally, I also believe that we want to talk a lot more about the successes, the solutions, and engage with the communities a lot more, where
Mhm.
we can probably not just expand access for Empower, but
Yep.
more importantly, expand access for our customers and patients so that a lot more access can come. And not just through Empower, but many more companies, because I believe this is a big focus area from a US healthcare industry standpoint. We are sitting at a time where this industry needs a lot more of us to come to the solution and bring the solution together. So I want to make sure that we are able to bring our peers, our industry peers, who can provide solution to this industry also.
Great point. And I think the intention is so clear and so kind. I wish you all the luck for 2026 and coming years. Tell me more about the therapies and the solutions which you are building. I mean, if you can talk about it.
So I mean, right now, I mean, if you, I mean, I will talk about the stuff which is publicly available. And again,
Yeah,
I'm not a
of
healthcare
course.
person myself, so I can't say that I'm an expert. But we have a lot of hormone replacement therapies which are available. Again, the usage is becoming more and more, because as people are trying to understand on what the uses and benefits of those therapies are, I'm seeing a lot more usage,
Attraction
as
for
well as a lot more inclination to adopt those, not just from
it.
a patient standpoint, but also from a doctors and patients and clinic standpoint. But I think now a lot more work needs to be done in partnership with in our legislators, with our government, to make sure we can build conducive regulations which do the right thing from a control standpoint, but also from a patient benefit standpoint. So I think we want to bring in those pieces too, so that we can work in tandem with the industry to drive those changes too. This was a wonderful conversation, Jazz, and I just hope that from this conversation today, a lot of the customer success leaders can obviously learn from the stuff, but also leave comments and give us some help on what they are doing, because I'm equally interested in learning from all of them as to what is happening. So I would love more engaging dialogue around this podcast, so I can hear from the industry. But if you find something useful, let us know. because we are looking to just keep expanding on the areas that I just talked about. So I think that to me is number one. And secondly, I think on the industry side, I love that we are talking about this, Jas, on this podcast, because I think this industry deserves a lot more visibility, not just from the government and the patients who are deserving, but the larger ecosystem. I think we all, as citizens of this country, have to start participating, is because this is a movement in my mind, and this movement is for the right progression and right lifestyles that we can help our patients accomplish. So to me, it's very personal. I think the mission that I came for in this company is very real, and I want to connect a lot more of individuals who who listen to this podcast, so that they all can contribute, they all can participate, they can all help us, because I think we all will make it happen, not just one or two people. So I look forward to everybody's partnership with this one.
Great thought. So thank you so much, Jaspreet, for your powerhouse discussion. A lot of insight. It was wonderful talking to you, and all the best.
I'm humbled. Pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much.